Good morning and welcome to the press briefing this morning at the IPC. My name is Peter, I work here at the center, and we're very glad to have set this up, briefing with you, Christine Nissen from the THINK TANK EUROPA, who's come in here to the press center this morning just to give us an update on the Danish election result from last night, but also hopefully looking a little bit at the trends in the wider Nordic region from where the results have also come in overnight. We have a couple of your colleagues with us on Zoom this morning as well, so we'll try to do it the way we normally do, open up for a chat when we've done the introduction by Christina and some questions from the room here, and then we'll just take it forward from there. But Christine, thanks for coming. I know you have a busy morning. We are glad to have you here for half an hour or so. So please welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the invite to come here today to talk a little bit about the election results from last night. So if we begin with the Danish context and results, these were quite surprising. No doubt about that. It is quite normal that these European Parliament elections are second-order elections in the sense that they also reflect, of course, what the voters want for their members of the European Parliament going to the EU, but particularly also it's an opportunity for the voters to share their sentiment about the sort of current government or political coalition. And in some respects, this was also very much the case yesterday. We saw the governing party, the Social Democrats, had a historically poor election. They got 15.6% of the votes, and that's the poorest election for the Social Democrats in, decades. Then we saw the Social People's Party, the Red-Green Party, getting a historically good election. They became the biggest party amongst all in the European Parliament, with 3 Danish members going to the European Parliament, and the biggest party in Denmark. So that's definitely a win for the green red votes in Denmark. Then we saw, which was also quite surprising, quite a lot of parties gaining a mandate. 10 parties altogether is going to the European Parliament from Denmark. 2 of these are newly formed parties. That was also sort of before the results came in, difficult to establish which way it would go, but all parties except the Alternative Party got a mandate. So now Denmark has 10 parties in the European Parliament. And we also saw how the moderates and the Liberal Party got a sort of a little bit better election than some of the polls had expected. So it wasn't such a devastating result for them compared to the Social Democrats in the sitting government. And if we sort of take a little bit of a broader perspective, we can see actually that this trend in Denmark, where We have a majority for the red-green votes. Is also, we see a similar trend in some of the other Nordic countries, where sort of green left-oriented parties are gaining ground, and thereby also breaking the far-right trend that are characterizing many other European states at this election. So I think that that's definitely a point to note down, that the Nordic countries are breaking this far right trend. And then if we move a bit sort of further in terms of the general election results, of course we did see, which was expected, progress for both the far right parties and the center right parties, especially in Germany and France. But the center in the European Parliament still has a fairly comfortable majority. So this far right trend is more sort of, I guess the European election results are will have a much greater impact at the national level than in the European Parliament level in many of these cases, because in the European Parliament, this far-right bloc does not have a blocking minority. Another trend, which was the case for the Danish election and also broader, was that we saw a fairly high turnout, a fairly high voter turnout. The 2019 turnout was a historic high. Now we see at an average that that the results are the same. For this year's election in Denmark, it's a little less than in 2019, but it's still very high indeed. So there are reason to believe that European Parliament elections have become sort of more important, and although you can still very much characterize them as second-order election in the sense that voters also use this election to give a response to the national situation, there are also increasingly sort of a Europeanized debate across European states. This was also very much the case in a Danish context, I would say, where European themes were the center of the debates. That said, as it still is with European elections, the election campaign started quite late. It wasn't sort of that important throughout, or giving that much attention throughout the 3 weeks where the campaign really took off. But I would say that that there is a tendency where these European elections are becoming more important, and if we see sort of across the European landscape, also where these elections are now having a great impact in national elections, not least in France, where we saw Macron directly using his very poor election results as a situation where he felt he needed to hold a national election too. I think this points towards a trend where these European elections are gaining in importance. So I think that would be it for me at this point. I'd be very happy to take your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine. And I think we've got at least we've got Daniel and we've got Camille with us on Zoom. So if there's any questions from you, please write them in the chat. We'll try to pass them on to Christine. Otherwise, we'll open up here in the room to see if there should be any questions. And we go to Jan first. If you could just grab the microphone and introduce yourself, then I'd be happy. Thanks.
I will do anything to make you happy. I'm Jan Olsen from the Associated Press. I'm just wondering, what's the explanation seen from your chair that the Green and Red parties are sort of gaining in the Nordic region, opposed to the fact that in Southern Europe, the more populistic and anti-EU parties are gaining?
Yep. That's a extremely relevant question to consider at this point. And I think that some of the most important election themes for the Nordic states this time around were still climate, the green transition, and then of course also sort of security, the threat for Ukraine, and then the fact that the EU has managed to sort of combine a storyline that reducing independence or dependence from Russian energy is also linked to the climate, and a green transition has gained ground here, where if you look at the themes that are most important for the voters, it is still security number 1 or 2, and then climate and green transition. And this is not the case in some of the countries that have received this surge in far-right parties, where it is sort of to a greater extent issues such as migration that are important for the voters there. They're also geographically a little, not to say that Ukraine is not extremely important there too, but I think that geography also matters in this sense. And sort of the problems that seems the most close to your everyday life. So I would say that there's definitely very widespread differences in terms of what the voters seem to be feels are the most important for them. And here it is climate and security. And less so migration. I think the question of migration in a Danish context and also Nordic are also becoming a bit more sort of normalized. We see a line across the parties where also the left are sort of saying that we need to. This was a fairly big part of the Danish election, to the extent that that they discussed sort of numbers, and there was a general agreement that Denmark wouldn't be able to take in that many refugees. And just some years ago, the variance in terms of this question differed much more. Now there is sort of a line where most agree that Denmark needs to have fairly strict migration rules. So it is both a question of sort of other issues being more important, but also a normalization of a strict migration policy in some of the Nordic countries, and less problems with this issue than some of the parties or countries in Southern Europe or Germany, for example. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll go to Bin.
So I'm Bin Chen, Europe correspondent for Shanghai Media Group. So in Germany, we see between the young voters, between the age of 16 to 30, right, they turn from the Greens to the AfD, the AfD, the alternative. So do you see also a significant change in the young voters' preference here in Denmark or in general the Nordic region? And you've mentioned the turnout is quite high, and I don't know if we calculate also the young people's turnout. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to see in Germany that now very young voters from 16 can also vote, and here there is a shift where they believe the green agenda to be less important, and more votes also amongst these two, the AfD. This was the same trend was not did not take place in Denmark. We did see, but also for national reasons, some of these far-right parties got a really poor election result in Denmark last night. And if you look at what is important for young voters in a Danish and Nordic context, it is still sort of, yeah, a climate issue, but not to the same extent as the last European Parliament election, which really was a climate election, and where the high turnout was also ascribed to it being an election that really mobilized the young voters. This mobilization force of the green transition has become weaker across Europe, and I have not looked into sort of the direct sort of results from yesterday, but I have seen some correlation between decline in sort of green transition, climate perspective correlated to security and a greater need in Europe to sort of be more closed and autonomous, and to sort of connect that to the green transition has not been possible in some countries, and some of it obviously being Germany. And in Germany and France as well, obviously, we saw how the European Parliament election very much reflected the governments in office, the leaders in office being extremely weak at this point. So yeah, in Denmark and some of the other Nordic countries, it was a bit more blurry, but here we saw very much this second order election situation where the voters voted against the sitting leaders.
Thank you. Online, before we go to you, Wendy, we've got the Polish news agency with two questions. We'll do one at a time.
Yeah.
So with the result last night, looking at the domestic impacts for Danish politics, is there likely that we'll see any change in the government? What is the outcome of this in terms of Venstre, Lund Poulsen and Frederiksen?
Yeah, so Frederiksen got an extremely bad election. Venstres Troels Lund Poulsen got, even though compared to the last time around, he got far less votes. It was a surprising high number of votes that he got compared to the current sort of or the expectations. So of course, and this is, we won't see any direct results or change in government right away, but there's no doubt that the power balance are sort of reflecting such a result as yesterday, because it was so significant, not least how sort of poor it was for the Social Democrats. And also one thing is the sitting parties in government, but also a party such as Socialistic People's Party. I think that looking towards the next national election, the Social Democrats might see that we have a very strong party at the left, and yeah, this will also matter. Yeah.
Thanks. And the second question, of course, it's something that you and your colleagues, some of you probably have a look at, but again, the Polish agency is asking Mette Frederiksen, is there still a chance for her for European post, new job this summer with the election last night in mind? Does that have any effect or?
Yeah, I think, of course, that she got a historically bad election result is not sort of pushing further for her to become to get one of the top jobs in the EU. I would say at this point it doesn't seem like she's sort of on the top of the list to get one of these jobs, but you never know what can happen. And I think that the results from yesterday also shows that we need to look at some sort of probably other power constellations in terms of who gets the biggest say in choosing these top jobs. Obviously, historically, it has been sort of France and Germany with the most say in these kind of negotiations. We have a historically weak German and French leader, so I think we need to look also at new power constellations such as Poland and Italy as well, in terms of who gets the biggest say in the European Council when these top jobs are appointed. So if I were to bet my money on Mette Frederiksen, I think that yeah, it's not that likely that she'll get the top job as the president at the European Council. But you know, it's also a very big puzzle, and it's difficult to say sort of which names are being pulled out of the hat last minute. For example, the current Commission president was not at all amongst the names debated the last time around, and all of a sudden in the very last hour she got the job. So I think that at this point we cannot know anything, but I would probably look towards other power constellations, and in that sense I think that the power constellations in Europe has also shifted towards the East and countries such as Poland and also Italy in terms of the results of the election, definitely.
Thanks. And again, Daniel and Camille, if you have more questions, please type them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll go first here to Wenji, please.
My name is Wen from ChinaDenmark.com. I have two questions. Sure. Is it okay? First is, do you have any statistics on how national EMP voted for different regulations during the last parliament sittings?
I do, but of course there are a lot of laws has been passed. Sort of a general comment would probably be that normally Danish MEPs are likely to follow their European party to a greater extent when they vote than their national party, and of course also these correlate to some extent, but the loyalty is with their European party. This last period, in the past 5 years, there has been the Social Democrats in the Danish group are the party, I think, that has voted mostly sort of against their European party. This is not least when it comes to migration issues. I think this is quite normal that you see when a party, a national party is in government, you might see some variations in terms of how the European member will vote. This was the case for the Social Democrats, and if you want, I can definitely provide you with some statistics of, the other parties as well. But the trend is that you normally vote with your European party, with some exceptions. Yeah.
The second question is, I remember a few years ago, Margrethe Vestager gave us a talk about the future 5 scenarios EU will go. I don't know, it's up to 2030, but do you still see any major, direction changes, or still follow up Margrethe Vestager's 5 scenarios predictions?
I think that a lot has definitely happened within the last couple of years. Some of these trends are still, I would have to check to see exactly. I don't know if there's a particular scenario that you'd like to discuss more in detail, but I would say that I think the next 5 years we will see, also taking into account the current election results, we will see a parliament and generally a EU system that will have more difficulty reaching big laws on the green transition. For example, the majority for negotiating the Repower EU law package is now no longer there. We see how generally in the European Parliament, how the Liberal Party and the Green Party has really decreased. And I think that a primary focus or for the next parliament in the next 5 years, and also the EU as such, will be focused on creating a more autonomous and sovereign Europe, being able to do more itself. So I think we'll see have a lot of focus on industry and less on green transition that has really characterized the past 5 years. So more on competition, industry, security and defense, also less liberal focus areas such as state aid, some of these things that were definitely less apparent in Margrethe Vestager's 5 scenarios. In that way, I think that Europe is becoming more closed in a way in the next 5 years. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we are coming up. We've been going for almost 30 minutes now, but there's still time for one more question. We'll go to Anders. The last one. Thanks.
Anders, freelance. Would you say in the historic perspective, is the 10 elected parties, is Denmark now saying yes to Europe? What is the situation right now with Denmark and Europe compared in the historic perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question in a Danish context, and actually also broader, I'd say, because we see how the parties elected are at this point, none of them wants out of the EU. That's historic. In that sense, we have a far left party, or however you'd categorize the Green Great Alliance, and a far left party, or right party, the Danish People's Party, and then Danmarks Demokraterne, that at this point do not want out of the EU, and we have the same trend across Europe. So even though we have a huge surge in also centre-right, but also far-right parties, the very big majority of these, including in Germany and in France, do no longer, for the first time, want out of the EU. So I think that's significant and quite sort of, yeah, maybe even a paradox a little bit, that we see a huge surge for also the far right, but for the first time, this there is a normalization of their EU position that we have not seen before, and this is the case also in Denmark. For example, the current Mette Frederiksen's Social Democratic Party has been, when she sort of came into power, the most skeptic government, and now of course we have a coalition government, but we have also seen a great transition for Mette Frederiksen as Prime Minister, but also her party and parties on the far left and far right towards change in perception, where the EU is becoming a place where you want to take some of the political battles instead of staying outside. Yeah, so I would say it's historic in Denmark and across.
Thank you, Christine. I think that was it. Very glad you could come and
of
be with us for half an hour. I'll just recommend that Christine represents THINK TANK EUROPA. There are many good colleagues there. Are you always open, as far as I know, to talk to the press?
Yes.
So I just recommend to have a look at their website. There are many experts, also on different topics related to all sorts of European politics and geography. So a little recommendation from here. Thanks to all of you guys here. Thanks to Daniel and Camille. Thank you.
Thank you so much.